Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that. 'Cause I was just thinking, like, compared to what we have like Zoom now and Skype, there's really not a lot of difference. There has not been a lot of change in those like kind of.
Oh.
If I don't know when can't remember when Skype came out, but there's like probably like those 20 years. There has not been a lot of change in video conferencing. Like Skype was ahead of its time.
Yeah. I like like especially back then, like video was like that was like something like people. That was like magic back then, because video wasn't like the thing back then. Just to buy a camera was very expensive back then, and to get video upload. This episode is brought to you by ERC. Let me ask you a question. Did you have a business during the pandemic with 5 or more employees? If the answer is yes, you might be leaving money on the table. All you gotta do is go to ercbankroll.com and you can get your money. The best part about this, it only takes 5 minutes or less to see if you qualify. Go to ercbankroll.com and put in your name, email address, answer 2 questions, click on the submit button, and you're done. It's that simple. And get your money. So don't wait. Go to ERC Bankroll. Welcome to another episode of the Online Marketing Secrets Podcast. I'm your host, Lopaze, so like and share this episode. And P.S. and by the way, before I get started, I'd appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you might be listening to the show. Love it or hate it, I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what you think. I want to hear any topic ideas you would like to hear me talk about, or any guests you would like me to bring on. So send me your email at support@kingofcashflowwebsites.com. That's support@kingofcashflowwebsites.com, or just click the link in the show notes. So that's how you get a hold of me. So with that being said, my special guest today has been building online communities for over 10 years now. As a matter of fact, he got started building online communities when he was 10 years old. He has 80,000 members in his personal online community. And he also helps other people do the same thing as well, with platforms like Discord and Reddit to help them succeed online. And also, he's from Australia, which happens to be a country that I've visited for a long time now. So my special guest today is William Cook. Welcome to the show. So, where you from?
I'm from Melbourne, Australia, so down the far bottom of the country. So where it's pretty cold all the time.
Nice. So when did you come online? When did you discover that there were even such a thing as online communities? When did that? How did you find out about these online communities?
Yeah, so I originally started kind of back in like 2016, 17. I was kind of looking around different platforms, mainly just hanging out with friends on different platforms. And, originally we used Skype, then Skype, kind of got outdated, so then we kind of kept moving from platform to platform until, we kind of came across these more community-focused platforms, such as, Discord, Reddit. And we really found that they were a great way to communicate, not just with ourselves, but also to meet a whole bunch of new people. I want to say, the first time I probably, actually got involved in communities was, gaming. So, playing with people from all around the world, having teammates from all over the place. I think that's probably where I really got into it first, and kind of all that, because, there were just so many people, on the internet that it was, you can really find anyone to match who's very similar to you. So I kind of got started on Discord 2017. Then this was just people I knew in person still though, so it wasn't I was branching out into kind of the online community space more. I was more just looking around, and then over time I kind of started meeting more people in other communities on these platforms. So making connections, making friends, discussing certain ideas, and kind of from there, that's kind of how the whole kind of community focus for me started. I kind of I joined this larger community around community management, and from there, really I really got invested in building communities, and I really found it fun bringing people together, sharing and making online experiences for others. You're kind of in that virtual space. So from there, I kind of got into, growth consulting, and just, volunteering, as well as, working for different community groups, helping with their online communities. So that's kind of, how I got started in this space.
Gotcha. So you think, well, first of all, when you say online communities, does this mean the apps like Telegram, I don't know, Snapchat, or does it cover the apps along with websites like Reddit as well?
So I presume you're referring to kind of social media networks.
Yeah,
I think this is kind of one of the big misconceptions about having online communities and platforms. So the way I like to talk about it is we have the speaker and the audience kind of connection. And there's this great tweet I always refer to when I come to discuss this. It's basically talking about how do we interact with our community members, and do they interact with us, or how are we doing it? So let me just load up the tweet so I have it. So essentially with platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, for the most part, you're doing a lot of kind of speaking to an audience. So you're giving them a lot of content, regular content, and they might discuss it in the comments a little bit. You have a following per se.
Yeah.
You have people who look at your content, who like your content, comment on it. Even on YouTube, subscribe to your content. And this is where you're kind of in charge of pushing all the content out and encouraging the discussion. On the flip side, which is where we look at platforms more like Discord, Reddit, Slack, all those kind of main platforms. Those are more what we call, user-facing places. So instead of you just pushing out content all the time, it's actually your members who are kind of making the content and talking to each other, where there's an actual members dialogue rather than an audience relationship. Because on Discord, it's not like you're pushing out content all day and all night. It's more so people are coming together to meet other people and connect in a far better, far more authentic way than through a platform like Instagram. Communities as well, they're kind of like families. They need to be nurtured. It's not like an audience where you can just pump content out and people will start following. You have to kind of interact with people on an individual scale, and really, kind of build culture, branding, make a nice environment, and make it kind of welcoming. So that's it's kind of really about which way the chairs face. Are you talking to people, or are you talking with people? that's how I think about community compared to our traditional social media apps, which are Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, where we kind of just give content and people react based on that content rather than our members actually creating the content.
Gotcha. So correct me if I'm wrong. When you say community, you're talking about like it could be a closed group of people or a control area where you set the rules and what people can say and what they can do, versus like an app where it's like anybody can get access to it. That's what you mean?
There are all different types.
Yeah, not saying that people can't get access to certain groups. They can ask for permission, but it could be denied. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think there are many types of communities. So the funny thing is most communities are what you're referring to as closed private communities. So they're communities more just for a group of friends.
Yeah.
So even something like an Instagram group chat could be considered a community because it's a community of people. Yeah. It might not be an online community per se because it's people in person, but it still could be considered that. Most communities, the funny thing is most communities are private communities because it's communities where friends connect. Yeah. Not so much so it's most of the larger ones come around the bigger ideas. So there'll be communities around a particular game, a particular kind of interest, a particular kind of business. Whereas the smaller communities and the more private communities tend to be a bit more broad in terms of what they're offering, which is kind of one of the pitfalls I find because you have to remember running a community is a bit like running a business. If you're running a general community server, which is what so many people do, it's really hard to find traction because there's nothing that sets you aside from all the other different communities. So being a unique community, I think, is a really helpful idea if you're trying to scale. That is, if you're just if it's just for you and a bunch of friends, a private group, perfect, do it your way. But yeah, communities can be a handful of people to thousands to millions. There is communities kind of one of those terms where it's like it's very much an overarching kind of idea. And then within that, there's many different types of kind of communities that we have, micro to massive. And then depending on, what size of community, you might be picking different platforms or what type of community. So, if you're running like a group for work, you might use a platform like Slack because that's made for work communication. Or, if it's, if you're maybe like more of an artist, you might try something like Patreon. That's it's not as much of a community, but you can still use that as a community because you can integrate with other community-based apps. So, yeah.
Do you find that it's very difficult for a lot of people to build communities online?
Yeah. So the funny thing about the platform we kind of focus on mainly, they're much more targeted. So we kind of have two types of people really. We kind of have the business people who kind of know what they're doing, have a mission. We kind of have like the more like the young adults who are just kind of building a community for fun to connect with new people. The issue generally speaking is that people just don't really understand. Like they're not making a community for the right reason. They're making the community essentially something to call their own, which is it's a grand idea, but there's really no kind of proper thinking behind it. There's no planning. There's no user experience or testing or things like that. Because I know so many communities you'll get. So with the idea of a community server, a lot of people are like, a general community server is kind of chat about anything in it. There's no kind of specific topic in it. The issue with those is that there's millions of communities exactly like that, and people often come to me, they're like, well, my community server's not growing, and I'm like, well, what's your server about? It's like, oh, it's a general kind of gaming community chat server. I'm like, well, do you think you can make it a bit more unique? How do you think you can make it different from the millions of other servers, communities that exist?
This episode is brought to you by ERC, Let me ask you a question. Did you have a business during the pandemic with 5 or more employees? If the answer is yes, you might be leaving money on the table. All you gotta do is go to ercbankroll.com and you can get your money. The best part about this, it only takes 5 minutes or less to see if you qualify. Go to ercbankroll.com and put in your name, email address, answer 2 questions, click on the submit button, and you're done. It's that simple. And get your money. So don't wait. Go to ERC Bankroll.
Exactly like yours. Like, why should someone join your community when they can join a much bigger community and meet many more people? So I think that's kind of our first point about growing communities. And I think the second point is that it's not as easy as growing like a social media platform like your Instagram or something, because you can't just chuck ad money in it and hope that it's going to grow. Each platform kind of has their own way of advertising and building up kind of that members nature, but you really have to nurture the members. It's really about, it's not too hard getting actual members to join, but it's more about retaining members, because being in a community requires like actual effort on behalf of the members. They got to interact. It's not like Instagram where they can just like a double tap to like a post and scroll on, keep going. You have to actually engage the community, get the value out of it. So, you really have to put time and effort into the members to kind of get that outcome that you want. And you have to, nurture them, encourage them, help them meet new people. So it really is, I think it's difficult, not impossible, but I think it's quite difficult. It gets easier as you scale though, because then, word of mouth and your members kind of become ambassadors for your community. And they'll be like, hey, they'll be to their friends, hey, come and join, the My community. And but yeah, I think as long as you have a unique idea and there's a space for it in the market, go for it. Because while it sounds like I'm trying to say this isn't a business, at the same time there are business elements to it. There are the core marketing fundamentals are still there. Is there a product market fit? Is there demand? All those kinds of things matter.
Yeah, I agree. It does take time, but the best part about it, if you can make it work, you always have the group. You can build relationships with those people forever, as long as you have the group, if you can make it work, But I think a lot of people, they want things to happen fast. Some people make the argument that says, well, why should I start a group? I'll just advertise and build a list of people and get them on my newsletter or something like that. I said, well, you can do both. The community group can be for the long term, and you can still advertise. So,
Yeah, I think, definitely kind of a community is much more, once you've kind of done the core work, they're very, you still have to engage with them, but they're not as heavy lifting as kind of running like an email newsletter or something, because, those members are kind of doing a lot of the work for you as well in terms of communicating with others. I think, you build that community, and then it's kind of a great way to send them into kind of your other things. So if you have an email newsletter, get them to sign up for your email newsletter, and vice versa. If you have an email newsletter, encourage them to join your community. You can really, they're really interchangeable. All these kind of different audiences, community platforms we use.
Yeah, I know gaming, man, is real big when it comes to communities. I've seen a lot of these communities online, and I think certain areas online, could be a profession or whatever, really benefit from having these online communities, So how did you know you could help other people build communities? What gave you that idea?
It was really more like I built my own community, and then people kind of came and were like, "Hey, look what you did. Can you like help us a bit?" I was like, maybe. That's kind of really how I came to being able to, work with other communities. And then like my community as well, it's very much centered around a community space for community owners. So it's kind of like a community in a way. That's what we call them. They're communities for people who run communities. And we basically share, new advice, new tips, tricks. We give advice, people ask questions, and we kind of all come together to help answer them. I think on your point before about gaming communities, especially, as they're probably one of the most popular types of online communities.
Yeah.
Primarily because gaming online itself is inherently about community. Look at platforms like GTA Online, all these different online games where you play with other people in real time. Those are all community games, and I've met so many people through those platforms and those games that that I'm still friends with today. We do missions together and stuff. I think that's kind of where the core idea behind these communities came from. I think gaming was a big factor in driving these communities. Because before that, like online communities weren't really think of as a big thing. It's more just like, oh, you got some friends to play with. Like there wasn't a lot of like investment in it, but now that people are seeing, the value that it has, especially, when it comes to games, because, if you're like GTA, if you have friends who play GTA Online as well, you're going to be more likely to play it more. Whereas if you're just playing it solo. So if we can keep these people coming back with their friends, we can make more money essentially. That's, essentially how I think, why gaming's one of the big ones.
Yeah, I didn't hear a lot of people talking about communities until the gamers started blowing up online. That's when I started, because I've been online since 2002. So yeah, back 2002, people weren't talking about the online communities at all. I started hearing about that like 2007. And I started hearing people talking about, hey, you need to build a community. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah, I think Skype was probably one of the original platforms.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's but I could see even back then when people started, when they explained to me what it all entails, because when I hear community, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what that is. But when they say online community, I'm like, well, that's a little, okay, explain that to me. And they said, well, there's websites, there's like forums, and some of them went away, but the concept is the same. You got forums, then you had people that had their own software, and they had their own little private group of people that they would keep in contact with, and basically just do whatever they wanted to do, basically.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was just thinking, like, compared to what we have like Zoom now and Skype, there's really not a lot of difference. There has not been a lot of change in those, like, kind of, I don't know can't remember when Skype came out, but there's like probably like those 20 years, there has not been a lot of change in video conferencing. Like Skype was ahead of its time.
Yeah. I like like especially back then, like video was like, that was like something like people, that was like magic back then, because video wasn't like the thing back then. Just to buy a camera was very expensive back then, and to get video uploaded online, that was like, how do you do that? That was like a big deal back then. So when Skype came out, and it was a couple of Skype versions, alternatives back then too. It came, and left. That was a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
So when you meet people, when they reach out to you and they ask you, hey, how do I build an online community? What do you usually say to get them started?
I usually start with, what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy doing? What do what is something you're actively interested in, and kind of why do you want to build an online community? A lot of people just want to build it kind of like for the clout, and like for, not really for the right reasons. And that majority of the time, that's why, they got the wrong reasons, so they're not properly invested. So usually I start with, what are you passionate about? What are your goals? Like if you're not passionate about an idea, then you're not going to be really all that invested. And I think the issue is as well, if you can't think of an idea and you go straight to the kind of like general community, as I was speaking about before, the general community, those always tend to fail because there's no kind of idea, there's no proper idea behind it. So, think about something you're passionate about, do some research into it, is there kind of a community behind this already? If there is, great. Go hang out in that community and see, what could you do differently to that community to make your own? And you can also make plenty of people in there who would be happy to help you. I think as well, looking at what you want the community to be like, do. Are you looking to make new friends? Are you looking to connect people, share information? These are all kind of important things you've got to think about, and what we kind of put in what we call a community strategy, in order to kind of, begin our community process. So yeah, think about what you're passionate about. Think about what interests you. Do you have friends who might want to help? All those kind of core ideas, I think, are important to think about before starting.
So in a perfect world, who would be your ideal client? Or do you work with people that are in certain categories or specific type of people, or are you kind of like broad?
So generally for community consulting, we're rather broad because community across all platforms is mostly the same. But what I specialize in mostly is community marketing. So there's many different parts of community engagement, community retention, community management, moderation policy, all those kind of things. For the most part, I focus on community marketing. So I'm much more targeted towards kind of the young adults, like targeting to young adults using platforms Discord, Reddit. Those are the kind of platforms I mainly focus on. So mostly working with gaming companies, a lot of Web3 based companies we've worked with. We've worked with a few anime, crypto, and yeah, just like a lot of gaming companies. They'll be okay, we're building a game, we want to build a community around it before we release it so we can get feedback and stuff. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So for me, like, I do all sorts of community consulting, but for the most part, I like specialize in community marketing in the kind of the more so the 21st century web.
Gotcha. So if people wanted to work with you, where would they find you online?
So you can literally just search Advertise Your Server. That's the company I run. It's the URL is aos.gg, so that's our corporate site. I have my own personal site as well. It's just wcook.net. That's kind of my personal portfolio. So you can check those out. We have kind of a lot of tools on there to help start growing your community for free. So you can check those out. We have a big blog, so check out the blog, read through our articles. We usually post a few times a month with really insightful things. We have each year we make a complete guide to community growth for that year with the latest trends and features. So have a read of that. Those are kind of great ways to get started with us.
There you have it. Like, share this episode. All links will be found in the show notes. Until next time, we're out. Peace.